key is to be seeking out those new growth opportunities and not worrying as much about the threats. I think it's really about people seeing change and volatility as a positive. People say, oh, no one likes change, but we like good change. If you were working for me and I offered you a promotion or a raise, you're not going to say, oh, that's too much change, I don't want that. On a personal level, you don't want to stay single if there's an opportunity to have a loving partner. So actually changing can be a real positive. It's just that we've got very used to this idea that change is negative, and we're stuck in our sort of comfort zones and want to stay in there. But actually, change can be positive. And as I said, often change, if you look back at the classic economists, most of them say and prove that actually the best time to get ahead is during a volatile time. It's those changes that can put you forward. If everybody's been able to identify what's going to happen ahead, then everyone will move at the same pace and everyone will do the same things. But if you can identify what's changing ahead of everybody else, that's how you can get the competitive advantage. So it's showing people within your company, from the boss all the way through to the whole of your workforce, that change is positive. That's a really important thing. And rewarding people who can change well, rewarding people who come up with good ideas, rewarding people who can identify new needs and so on. I call it positive resilience. It's not just about bouncing back, it's about bouncing forward. It's when businesses are preparing for an uncertain future, yes, of course you need to anticipate threats, and it's important. But the most important thing, the smart companies know that actually the key is to be seeking out those new growth opportunities and not worrying as much about the threats. When I started off in this business, I was very much focused on the consumer. What will consumers' future needs be? What will their future expectations be? So when I was looking forward and predicting, it was about them. Over the last few years, it's been much more, although I'm still doing a lot in that, I've also now been working with HR departments, looking at how to restructure the organization itself, because I can see not just how business is likely to change in the future, but also how employee needs, not just consumer needs, are likely to change. And if you look at the workforce, it's so important to have an engaged workforce, to have a workforce that has a shared vision, that all work together, no matter where they are. It's absolutely possible to have a workforce that can be spread across the country or across the globe, some of whom can be working from one office, some of whom can be working from home. You can have more and more a mix now of freelancers and full-time. But if there's a vision that they can all share, then that is the way to bring them on board. One of the keys is to do that. And if you have a disengaged workforce, you're simply not going to be able to create the sort of productivity that you need to gain growth. I think let's turn it on its head and let's look at what you can achieve with an engaged workforce. If you have that vision, if people can work together, you can create so much. You've got so much within your workforce, so much knowledge. You can create a knowledge hub to give advice to your customers. You can create an efficient workforce that will make life smoother for your consumers and so on. So it's very much the key is to try and engage your workforce. Again, if you look at all of the stats, clearly the most profitable companies are the ones with the most engaged workforces. I think part of the reason for the disengaged workforce right now that we have, not just here in the UK, but across Europe and in other parts of the world, is that a lot of workplaces are kind of involved in fairly outdated practices. People spend their weekends on their phones, being able to do everything kind of on their mobiles, and they're out and about, they get in touch with friends and say, well, should we go to the cinema, what should we watch, can I order this thing online via my phone, all of that, this ability to do everything on the go. And then they come in to the office. More and more people have to now come back to the office, and they've got a fixed desk and a fixed phone, and everything's suddenly all back to an older age, as it were. And I think it's essential that we change up the way that not just the workforce is structured, but also the way that businesses and the office space is set up as well. We've got an anniversary coming up in the next couple of years. It's the 300th anniversary of the first ever office being opened. It was actually opened in London. It was opened in Admiralty House in the Strand in London. Now, if you look at that, I've seen the plans of that. I've seen some of the diaries of the people who created it. It's really not that different to the office of today. If you took somebody who was the office manager of that first office 300 years ago and in a time machine kind of brought them forward, they'd recognize the present office. They'd be able to walk around. They might not understand what computers are, but they'd know the meeting room, they'd see the sales department and the accounts department. And that's not good. If you look at kind of the transport we had 300 years ago, or the fashions we had 300 years ago, or the medical ideas we had from 300 years ago, all those have rightly changed massively as we've changed. So it's time that the office space caught up. It's time that we created an office space that is right for tomorrow's business. It needs to be, yes, we have little booths for people to concentrate, but really it's about finding a space for cooperation, finding a space for collaboration, because that's what you want the people in the office to be doing. That's why you need the office. It's really useful to understand some basic human psychology, and anything you can do, whatever department you're in, if you are consumer facing, it's really important to try and get some understanding. I've learned so much over the years on that. It's really helped me. And I think the key on that is that typically any human is motivated by their emotions, whether that's fear or happiness or loneliness or embarrassment or whatever it is. And if you can kind of pick up on some of those emotions and see, if you understand, and this is how I work out the process, and in order to be able to predict what customers' new needs and expectations are going to be, understand what emotions are motivating them right now, try to identify what might affect those emotions, in terms of the economic situation, maybe more fear because the geopolitical situation, a bit more confidence because of some of the new personal technologies coming through. If you can try and pick up on what some of those future drivers might be, then you can understand what the new emotions might be, and therefore what the new attitudes are, and therefore what the new behaviours are. It's really key. As I say, I feel like sometimes I'm a cross between a journalist and a psychiatrist, understanding what's happening in the world, looking at the news, and also understanding how that's going to affect customer attitudes and behaviours.